Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad that you could join us. This is our first HeadTalk webinar with Invictus School Hong Kong. Thank you very much for sparing the time. In just a moment, we will invite our speakers. Just before we do, a couple of housekeeping issues. Please ask questions at any time. Use the chat box. If you would actually like to speak, have your voice heard, then we can unmute you and you can let us know. If you have a question, just raise your hand or ask a question in the chat box. We have a little giveaway at the end. So we're scheduled to speak to our heads for about half an hour. We'll cut that a little bit shorter so that we can take extra questions from you guys. And we have a little, as I said, a giveaway at the end. So please stay watching right until the very end. So I believe that that is all the housekeeping rules. And in just a moment, then we can invite our speakers. This afternoon, we are joined by our heads from Invictus School Hong Kong. We have Chris Jackson is the founding principal of the primary school, and Fiona Chan is the founding principal of the kindergarten. Chris and Fiona. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. So how's the weather in Tseung Kwan O?
It's a beautiful day here, actually, a lovely day, but we're inside at the moment, but it's a nice day.
Right. So we had a great response to this is our first HeadTalk webinar. And we have about 30 parents online live that are looking to ask you guys some questions. And we've prepared some questions in advance that we think that the most parents would be interested in hearing about. Obviously, Invictus is a new school in Hong Kong. And we'll get to things like curriculum and fees and what makes you interesting or different. And those are some of the topics that we'll cover. But first of all, maybe I could just ask each of you just to tell us a little bit about yourselves. Chris or Fiona, who would like to start?
Would you like to go first?
Sure. Okay, I'm Fiona Chan, the principal for Invictus Kindergarten. I'm from Hong Kong, study in the US, and then once I come back, I actually worked in early childhood education for more than 17 years, and I joined Invictus recently in August 2019.
Chris?
And yeah, my name's Chris Jackson. I realized just this morning that I landed in Hong Kong on this day many, many years ago. I won't say what year it was. It was quite a few years ago. So I've been in Hong Kong a long time, worked in lots of different schools here, but this is definitely the most exciting one I have worked in. So I'm looking forward to everything that it brings.
Perfect segue, Chris. Why is it exciting?
I get to do interviews like this. That is one thing I have not done before, so this is a fresh one for us. I suppose it's exciting for me as a professional teacher, if you like, and now principal, to be starting something from the beginning. You know, in all my sort of previous roles, I was a new teacher, and I kind of, I moved into a school and I did things the way that school did them. And they were always very good schools, I should add. But now I'm part of something with all my colleagues, including Fiona here. We're actually starting something. And when you start something, you can try to do it exactly how you think it should be. And that's the exciting part. It's the challenging part, and sometimes it's the tiring part as well.
So, of course, Invictus is a new name in schools in Hong Kong, but it's not entirely new. So could you just tell us a little bit about the Invictus family of schools?
Shall I take that one for you? Yeah. Okay. The first Invictus school, as part of our group, opened in Singapore about 5 years ago. And it was a successful new school. It's actually now at the secondary level. And the expansion has continued. So Invictus Hong Kong is the second of the schools. And there will also soon be one in Cambodia as well. So we're all part of a parent group which is based in Singapore. And as well as the schools that share the Invictus name, there's also quite a large group of kindergartens in Singapore as well. So part of a large organisation which gives you lots of support that you need to get a new business going, as it were. But it's new to Hong Kong, so that, that's the exciting bit for us.
Right. So the site there in TKO is kindergarten and primary.
That's right, yeah.
And parents might be wanting to ask a few questions about the secondary, although this session is going to be focused on kindergarten and primary. But just to let the parents know that there's a secondary school as well that will be opening in Taiwan next September. Is that right?
Coming September.
September 2020.
That's right.
That's right, yeah. Thank you, Chris and Fiona. We're going to, parents, we just want to know like who you are a little bit. We have a little poll that I'm about to launch just to tell us, you know, the age of your children, and then that will maybe help us to, you know, guide the conversation, kindergarten questions to Fiona and primary more to Chris. So let me start with, you know, what is it about Invictus? I mean, does Hong Kong really need another new school? Well, here you are, you're new. And so why would parents choose Invictus as a new school, perhaps, as opposed to any of the many choices of schools that parents have nowadays?
So far, the parents told us that we are bilingual school. We offer accessible fees. We have full chain school from kindergarten, primary, and secondary school, and we also use Singapore math. These are the feedback from the parents that, you know, they come to our tour and they tell us this is why we come here and we are here today.
Okay, should we break each of those down? Sorry, the last point that you made, Fiona, was that about using Singapore maths?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break this down into, yeah, as you say, I mean, the teaching of Chinese is a very hot topic for a lot of parents. What curriculum are you using? Definitely, we will end up talking about fees, and I want to also ask you a little bit about the faculty that you have there. Shall we start with curriculum? So it's lots of acronyms, of course, in our business. We throw around labels like IEYC and IB, and we think that people know what they mean, but we need to be clear that IEYC and IPC is the main curriculum that you're choosing to use. So could you explain what that is? Yep.
So in kindergarten, we use IEYC. We chose that because—
What does it stand for, Fiona?
International Early Years Curriculum. Yeah, because in the program, it gives us very clear objective and guidelines how do we plan our lesson plan. And then parents will know exactly what the children are learning every day. So it will be, and at the same time, our curriculum is, because we offer the same curriculum, so all the children are basically learning the same thing. And it also includes reflection of the students, which is a really good thing for a young age to do at the moment, because we offer structured program. So except the core subject like Chinese, English, and math, we want to have IEYC because of the age, because we want to be more play-based as well. So I think IEYC would be very suitable for kindergarten.
But why IEYC? Why not EYFS or PYP? Or because I think it's less well known for sure. I think many parents here don't know IEYC. It's fieldwork education is the body that develops the curriculum. Could you tell us a little bit about the background and why you choose?
Yeah, because it does have a very clear learning process, you know, from an entry point to exit point. It clearly states, you know, what are the objectives of this unit. So for kindergarten, we pick one unit. Maybe we will pick 5 to 6 units in 1 year. And then the children will learn about these topics around the whole year. And in each unit, we also focus, we follow the process of the learning, you know, the learning process to make sure that children are learning something that in the curriculum as well, to make sure that, you know, as I said, to make sure that parents also understand what we are learning versus the other approaches or the other curriculum. We find that IEYC is more particular, you know, to a specific area. Let's say if we are telling children how to build a house, we know that the materials we can prepare for wheat or hay or stone or wood. You know, we can really name the materials rather than just telling the parents, oh, they are learning how to build a house. So IEYC is more clear on objective and the materials and the planning, and it will be easier for the teachers to teach as well.
Okay, and so that's for the kindergarten, and as they move to primary, it's international primary curriculum.
Right, yeah, so from years 1 to 6, it's called the IPC, and you mentioned fieldwork education, and it's the same body. And one of the things that they do is they provide a very large resource bank, if you like, sort of online, of all the sort of materials you might want access to. good school always makes its own as well, though. So that's kind of what they sort of give to support you. But another important part of the fieldwork role, if you like, is that they accredit you and monitor what you are doing. Because I think it's very important that it's all very well saying to parents that we are a good school and we do X, Y, and Z and ABC. I think parents quite like to know that some sort of external body has validated, given you a rubber stamp that yes, that school's doing a good job, because then it gives parents some security that they're placing their child, every parent's most important thing is their child after all, in a school that is providing a good all-rounded education. You mentioned we were like another new school in Hong Kong. And you're right, there are many new schools, quite a few recently, so there's a lot of choice for parents, and choice is generally considered a good thing. But when you're a new school, you want parents to believe you. So having that sort of external organisation validating us helps sort of provide that.
Yeah.
Fiona talked about sort of theme-based learning and so forth, and that continues up through the primary age range. So you don't have a geography lesson or a science lesson, as it were. You have a theme or a topic, which might go for 4 to 6 weeks on average at the primary age. And they're very engaging, these sorts of themes and units. There's one in year 5, I think it is. It's called Mission to Mars. You know, space gets children excited. There's lots of opportunity to learn in different ways. Because as any parent knows, if a child is excited and motivated, that's half the battle, isn't it? I'm sure in this period of sort of homeschooling that's going on at the moment, many parents might realise just how hard it can be to motivate groups of children sometimes. So then those topics, you know, they then bring in all the different subjects. Okay. Some of the topics are more science-based, but then the following topic might be one that's more of an arts-based. Because what we want to offer in this school, and we're already offering, because we're a functioning school already, is a nice, broad, holistic curriculum. So any child, whatever their strengths and their interests are, you know, our curriculum will meet that need, meet that interest.
Okay. And we should, thank you, Chris. We should just mention that it's not completely new in Hong Kong. There are a number of very well-established, reputable schools that are using this curriculum.
Right.
And I can mention those names. I think it's no secret, you know, schools like French International School and ISF in the preschool and DBIS and Island Christian Academy, among others, right? So I definitely, it has the credence and it has the reputation. So I know that you add on to that, and people are already asking questions about the Chinese program and the physical education program, and we'll get to that. So just to also tell us how you marry the IEYC, IPC with the Singapore maths that you mentioned, Fiona.
Okay, so in kindergarten, basically in the morning, we focus on the core subject, Chinese, English, and math. So, and then in the afternoon, we focus on IEYC activities. So, and the IEYC activities will also include what kind of math that we are teaching on that day and then implement in the activity. And for the Singapore math, we are also using Singapore textbook. And, you know, for kindergarten in mathematics, we are always learning about the concepts, you know, the counting. So all these can be implemented in the same activities in IEYC as well. And in IEYC, there are different subjects included. You know, sometimes it's literacy, sometimes numeracy, sometimes it's art or science. So we can always, you know, put the curriculum in together as kind of like an integrated curriculum.
But again, why Singapore maths, Fiona?
Singapore math, so far, Singaporean, you know, the math test is always getting the highest score. I think this is quite well known as well. And because we are a school from Singapore, we want to keep something that is from Singapore that we can use in Hong Kong. And kindergarten in Hong Kong is the first Invictus kindergarten in Invictus organization. So we would like to keep something, you know, from Singapore that, you know, to tell parents that we are from Singapore as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that follows through into primary.
Yes.
That's right. I mean, we've met quite a few parents over the past few months, as you can imagine, and Many of them have been parents whose children are currently in sort of local schools, and often they have asked about maths teaching. I suppose in this part of the world, maths is always a very important subject.
Yeah.
But whenever we've explained the Singapore approach and just talked a little bit more about it, it's generally been very well received. Actually, I think parents are quite sort of pleased to hear that we've got a rigorous maths program. That becomes something our school is really well known for, as well as many other things, I hope. I see nothing wrong with that. And I can think of one other international school that don't officially follow the program, but they have dipped into it because they recognise there were some very good aspects to it. I think this school, they saw a few gaps in their own curriculum and realised that they could do a little cherry picking, and they've taken part of the Singapore approach.
Okay, so yeah, as you say, parents are very, very interested in maths. And then, of course, the other subject that is most asked about is Chinese. So I was going to ask, generally your approach to Chinese. One of our attendees has asked the depth that you'll go into in the Chinese program. Will it include literature, poems? So if you could include that in your general answer to how you do approach the teaching and learning of Chinese.
So in kindergarten, we use a set of books that to make sure that how many words, to count how many words that in 1 year, the children will all learn about reading it. And of course, children coming from Invictus, they're from different countries. So I would assume that I expect, children will have different abilities. And because of that, we will not just have one curriculum, we will customize their Chinese level and their, and the activities that we set up. For example, if someone that they have no exposure in Chinese before, not even speaking one word, and how can we expect them to start writing Chinese character, right? So we will prepare, for them to train their fine motor skill first. And then when they become more familiar with the Chinese word, when they are able to start writing some strokes, we can also prepare a few worksheets for them to, from dot to dot, tracing the dots, to like writing the entire Chinese character. So we will mainly customize, the learning in Chinese.
But how does that work, Fiona? Because can you explain the setup of the class? How many teachers in each class, how many students, and how one teacher will speak in Chinese and one in English? Can you explain more?
Yeah, so we're a bilingual school. So basically Mandarin English is 50-50. How do we implement, the curriculum is every other day. So we only teach English in one day, let's say Monday, then the next day will be Mandarin.
Okay, I think this is really important, and this is a really interesting difference for Invictus as opposed to a lot of other bilingual schools. So when you say bilingual, you actually mean immersion, in the sense that the students will receive, is it 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next week, or you do half day, right?
Yeah, 2 days this week, yes, and 3 days next week.
So the entire day, the child is immersed in that language.
Yes, because we want to provide the environment for them to learn the language. And that's why in the activities, we can set up different kind of activities to cater different need for every student, because we will set up about 7 to 8 stations to make sure that, if they're not in that level, yes, they can at least do something else, So one activities can cater 2 to 3 abilities group of children. So that's why, there's no point to push the child if they are not ready, because most of the time in kindergarten, we want them to have the interest to learn first, and they're not afraid about the language. And some parents may also ask us, so what if they don't know about the language at all? So, and what we would do is, in the beginning, we use body language to, hopefully make children feel more comfortable within the language first. And then, and hopefully they can start, saying some words and maybe some common phrase like hello, goodbye, 1 to 10, something like that. I think once they get used to the Chinese environment, they will gain more confidence.
But are most of your students, Fiona, not from Chinese backgrounds, or are most of them from Chinese backgrounds?
Actually, it is a mix. It is a good mix. At the moment, we have students from UK, we have kind of from Japan, from Hong Kong. So I believe Invictus School do we do cater children from everywhere. So that's why we do need a customized learning approach.
Okay, and Chris, how does that flow through? We have a question about how do you manage to maintain the intensity of Chinese as you go up through the primary school? Interestingly, we have quite a number of parents who are who have children in year 5.
All right, that's interesting. Use the phrase flow through, and we definitely want it to flow through. Fiona talked about it was a 50-50 in percentage terms in kindergarten. And we maintain that in the lower half of the primary school. But beginning from year 4 and then up to year 6, it gradually tips towards English. So by year 6, there'll be about 70% of the time in English and 30% in Chinese. And this is part of the preparation for an international secondary school education, which by and large, of course, would be English medium. Now, the nature of that 50% or 30%, depending on the year group, we will have, or we do already have, quite a range of abilities in the 2 languages. Some children, Mandarin is their first language and English is their second, and it's the opposite for other children. So lots of work to do on differentiation to make sure that we're giving children exactly what they need. But that is good teaching practice. All teachers should always differentiate to give the children exactly what is needed in the class. You said that one of the questions I asked about sort of Chinese poetry and culture and that sort of thing. And our Chinese program, it's not just a language experience, it is designed to be a cultural sort of heritage experience as well, if you like, to include all of those sorts of things. And one of the key things, and we're not the only school, but there aren't so many international schools that do this, is that we are using traditional characters. Now, I have to admit, when I see traditional and simplified characters, I personally have a little trouble working out the difference. But I have been told by those who really know that there is a very big difference. And lots of the parents who I've spoken to up to now, knowing those traditional characters, if they are Hong Kong parents, the language of the written language of Hong Kong is very important for them. Yeah. So that is a bit of a sort of unique selling point, we hope. And when it's not, say, the poetry and the culture, language teaching works best when you've got an immersive approach, so children really have to use the language, but also you really want them to use it as well. So when we've got our themed units, perhaps it was that one called Mission to Mars that I mentioned earlier, that some of that learning in that unit, and that's a very science one, as I'm sure everyone has guessed, lots of that learning will be in Chinese as well. Children doing research about space in Chinese. Maybe they're presenting some data in Chinese. Maybe they're sort of writing the speech they will give when they are the first person who lands on planet Mars, and they're going to give that in Chinese. So the language is very much part of the wider curriculum. Now, every international school in Hong Kong teaches Mandarin, but of course, in lots of schools, it's maybe 4 to 5 lessons a week, where it's very much an additional sort of second language, a bit like the way I used to learn French when I was in school. Whereas for us, it's part of the curriculum. Some of the PE lessons will be in Chinese. Some of the music lessons will be in Chinese. And that's part of that whole sort of cultural and immersive approach.
Yeah, I think it's very much needed in Hong Kong.
That's what we're hoping.
We've been talking for almost nearly half an hour. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you some quick fire and try to answer some of the basic easy questions that we've had coming in, very sort of factual things. Do you still have places for year 1?
Yes.
Thank you. What size are the classes in primary?
Up to 25 max.
So maximum 25. School bus for kindergarten from Hong Kong Island?
Yep.
Based on demand, or already you have, or there's no kids going to school just now?
Slightly in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah, we planned one from the Hong Kong Island.
Okay. A couple of more complicated questions. The simple ones, how many students in total? What's the maximum capacity when you are full?
In the primary school, we will go, in our current sort of building, go up to 50 children per year group, so 2 classes per.
50 times 6 is?
Yes, 300, I believe.
Yeah. For
300.
It will be 4 classrooms. One classroom will be maximum 24 students, 2 teachers. So I have maximum 96 children.
And how many do you have currently enrolled? And you've only been open for how many weeks is it now?
5 weeks, I think, since we got our license.
Right.
Yep.
We
are very glad.
24, is it? 24, 25?
I have 7 in my kindergartens, about,
I think the total for the two of us is
yeah.
about 24 at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, they're not coming to school, they're all online learning,
Of course.
which is a very unusual way to start a school.
So that's Christine's question about actual and maximum capacity. Thank you, Christine, for your question. William is asking if kindergarten students can be guaranteed to enter primary school, and I believe the answer is yes.
Correct.
And a question about enrolling back into the local public school system, like other local kindergartens. Now that's interesting. William is asking about local kindergarten, and Chris, you mentioned that you're an international. Which is it?
Technically, we're a private school.
Right.
I view us as an international school, maybe not in terms of our EDB license, but an international style of education.
Right.
Which would be, you know, in our 2 languages,
Yeah.
following the sort of approaches you would see in other international schools in Hong Kong, or indeed around the world. You know, it's sort of less of an emphasis on rote learning, more of an emphasis on independent learning, inquiry types of approaches to teaching and learning and so forth.
And
So
the absence of the local,
in inverted commas, I think.
Yeah, and the absence of the local language, of course, which is Cantonese.
Right, yeah.
Chris, how many Year 5 students do you have enrolled currently, if any?
Oh, we do have some Year 5. I've got the Year 5 and the Year 6 muddled up in my head. So I think Year 5 is probably 3 at the moment, and there are 3 in Year 6.
Okay. Now we're not focusing on the secondary today, but it is also a guaranteed flow through to the secondary school. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
And yet, on the other hand, the students would equally be able to access any number of other international schools in Hong Kong if they chose to do so.
Yeah. I like to think that what we are providing is an education that is suitable for the next step in a learning journey, wherever that might be. We hope it's from kindergarten to primary to secondary, but equally children may go to other schools in Hong Kong or in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Jeffrey's asking, this is a question for you, Fiona. We assume too much maybe sometimes. What's the, he's asking about the split between simplified and traditional characters. There is no split, Jeffrey. It's entirely in traditional characters. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, if that's clear. Now, someone's just asked the question I was about to ask. Your approach to inclusion, so, you know, children with individual learning needs, whether it's ASD, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, we're seeing a lot more of these children. Can you explain briefly your approach to inclusion?
Yeah. So, as you say, we call ourselves an inclusive school, and we want every child to have the opportunity to the right sort of education that they need to meet their needs. Excuse me. And we have already interviewed for August next year, and for now, children who have got some, you know, difficulties with learning in certain areas. Sometimes they may come with a label, as it were, and other times not. And it doesn't matter. In fact, sometimes it's better not to have a label, isn't it? Yeah. But what we always say to parents is that if you're interested in our school, please contact us. Come along, bring your child, maybe not at the moment, but when things have died down, and we'll have a sort of face-to-face meeting, because we want to sort of meet children and through an informal assessment find out what the challenges for that particular child might be, what they actually need, and then have an honest dialogue with parents about whether we are the right environment and the right place for that child. Because what we don't want to do is be anything less than honest. And if we can't meet a child's needs, we would certainly want to say so. Sometimes, sort of, you know, a child in one learning environment, a challenge that they've got might be exaggerated in that. But if you then take that child and put them in a different school or a different learning environment, what was a challenge might become less of one because you sort of tackle it in a different way.
Right.
A couple of parents recently, we actually had an honest discussion about maybe a model where a parent pays to help have a little extra support for a child to allow them to fully access our sort of curriculum and what we've got going on, because we have mentioned that we're trying to be an accessible school, which is part of our sort of fee level structure. So naturally, there's a limit to the staff-student ratio you can have within a certain pricing model.
Right. Well, we'll get to pricing. I was coming to that. So can I just understand that your approach is to accept as many children as possible whose needs you can accommodate, but that's in a mainstream setting. You don't have specialist learning support teachers, or do you?
At the current time, we don't. In the future, once our numbers have grown a bit, then that is what we will do. And say there might be a teacher who sort of has their day is a day of sort of pull-out sessions for children from different classes and so forth. But we've got to get big enough to be able to do that. So in the early days, we can't quite do that.
Okay. So from inclusion, we move to selectivity, or is your school selective? Are you academically selective? A couple of parents are asking about the procedures for entry assessment at K1.
You want to, yeah. So I really want to tell the parents that nothing that they have to prepare for the children. Make them feel comfortable. We don't have any assessment that give the children pressure. Just make sure they are not hungry and come in feeling comfortable, happy. That's all they have to prepare for the children.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And a good night's sleep. But it's not a test. There's not a line to meet. Obviously, the most important part of our assessment process is to find out about children's language ability in 2 languages, of course, not just one. It doesn't mean a child has to be bilingual to come to our school. We aim for them to be bilingual by the time they leave our school, which is why I think parents will choose us. But we want to know exactly where they are when they join us, so we know what where we're building up from, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to do another couple of quick fire questions.
Okay.
We're moving to Hong Kong next May. When should we apply for a place, please? My child is currently in year 4. Will there be a place in year 6, or should we start in September next year? I think I can answer that. Or
so they should apply
next May, is that 2021? Then soon, right? Maybe once the schools open after the summer, you could start the process. People are asking about the secondary school. We will run a separate session. There's been quite a lot of interest about secondary and people asking about university admissions. This session is focused on kindergarten and primary, so we will definitely run a separate session on the secondary. Do you provide a transfer to your Singapore schools or perhaps Cambodia schools?
Yes. Assuming there is space for a child to transfer to, but effectively there's a priority transfer between any of the schools with the Invictus name or actually sharing the same parent group.
Okay.
We've been asked that a few times, actually.
Yep.
Right. Any religious emphasis?
No.
No, no. So I think that I'm going to end with, there's just one more message, with the obvious elephant in the room, the fees.
Right.
So if you've been following our thread on Hong Kong schools and daily articles in SCMP about fees, obviously parents are finding a lot of international schools difficult. The affordability factor is becoming very elusive. So could you tell us the fees for kindergarten and primary?
Yes. Yep. We're actually charging the same, 100,000 per year, 10 installments. We're actually following the Singapore model, the pricing model. And we want to give an option for Hong Kong parents for international curriculum versus, the other internationals, compare with the other fees in other international schools. We really want to offer another option for Hong Kong parents. And
I mean, feedback has been positive that we are offering accessible and affordable fees, which $100,000 per year is. Of course, why the discussion has changed so much in the past few weeks is all about the pandemic and the world economy and all of that. And no matter what the fee level, I suppose, if you are a parent paying for school fees and there is an issue in your industry or your job, as a parent, you're going to be worried about how you're going to sort of provide for that. And last week we made an announcement actually that our sort of parent group would offer a financial support package for our enrolled students or students who choose to enroll very soon, perhaps for August next year, to help people sort of get through this. Because I'm confident, you know, the whole world will get through this, but it is a hurdle to be jumped. So while our fees are sort of fixed according to EDB rules, if you like, we are trying to find ways to support people, because we don't want to lose students, and we don't want parents to think, is this the right move for me and my child in these sort of economic times?
But the fees are already very, very low. So that's 100,000, no entry fees, capital levies, debentures. There's an entry
there's
fee?
A small entry fee of 15,000.
15,000.
It's a deposit and so forth. But there is not a large debenture or capital levy or anything like that. No, you're quite right about that.
Yeah.
And kindergarten is a half-day program, right?
It is actually from 9 to 2.
It's an extended day program. Okay. How can you keep the fees so low?
Our parent group, it's called CES. It's a very large sort of construction company, and they've got hotels and
Chip and Sang.
that's right. The chief executive of the company, who I met a few months ago, he sort of viewed the success of Singapore, and Singapore is generally accepted to be a very successful place, and he viewed that as an investment in education, that the government had chosen to invest in education, which has developed the Singaporean society into what it is today. So this our sort of CEO has decided that he wants his company to have an educational arm. So they are investing in schools, in kindergartens, in education, and even in some educational companies, even sort of software and that sort of stuff, as a way of developing sort of, you know, the next generation, if you like, and giving other children, not just in Singapore, now in Hong Kong, an opportunity for a good education, and not necessarily have to rely on parents being able to pay a very high school fee to get that good education, as like the next step in life, I suppose.
Okay, and in terms of like compared to a large established international school, let's be honest, the facilities are modest. So how do you compensate for that, if you like?
For example, you know, we don't have a canteen, for example. Children will bring a packed lunch and a packed snack and that sort of thing. We will make use of the local government facilities for PE lessons and things like that. So you take out a canteen and a gymnasium and things like that. Then your premises and your facilities become slightly more modest, and that effectively is part of the overall sort of the pricing structure, if you like. I'd love to show an indoor swimming pool, but I can't and I won't. And I think parents are perfectly happy that they also understand there's a bit of a give and take, if you like. And if they're only going to give us 100,000, which is still a fair amount of money, no one's going to deny that. Obviously, we have to be slightly more adapted in how we provide the education. But no shortcuts in standard of education, none at all.
Because we're lucky that we actually have 2 sports centers, which is just near us, and then there's another football field which is just opposite to the school as well. So we want to utilize the government facilities. Yeah,
and they're perfectly more than adequate, right? So you're right in the middle of Cheung Kwan O. For any parents that don't know, it's the Monterey, right on the beautiful setting, right on the waterfront. It's a very, very popular destination now for families with children. And so if you're wondering about the facilities, you guys are receiving parents for tours in very small groups individually?
Mainly individually at the moment, actually, for obvious reasons, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, so although the school is closed, if you are interested to visit Invictus without children, unfortunately, you can still arrange tours directly with Chelly, is the admissions manager, and we'll post her details just after the chat. A couple of really quick fire ones. People are asking about any limitation on the number of Hong Kong passport holders.
None at
No.
all, no.
None at all, because you're a private school,
That's
yet
right.
internally you'll be looking for diversity. Can you tell us, I know the numbers are relatively small, but what's the diversity looking like at the moment?
Pretty broad.
Yeah, it is.
2 students started today who are half Turkish and half Singaporean, so that's quite an unusual one, I think.
Siblings.
Actually, yes, that's right.
Okay.
At the moment, we've got children
Yeah.
from the mainland, we've got local Hong Kong children. I can think of one Australian, Turkey. Yeah, we've got that whole sort of
Yeah, it is.
that whole range,
Yeah.
and I hope that'll be part of our sort of community spirit, if you like.
Yeah.
An international school with an international city and so forth.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we've reached the end of our time. Thank you to all the parents that were that joined us this afternoon. If you would like, we will get in touch with you. We have a free kindergarten guide or a good schools guide that we can give to each of you. Chris and Fiona, any parting words?
Ooh. I think please get in touch with us. Please come and have a look. Please come and meet us.
Yes.
Right.
You know, I hope we've spoken well about our school on a small camera, but it's even nicer when people come and see the real thing and meet people face to face.